Hello and welcome to the Accredited Investors Only Podcast presented by Accredited Life. I am your host, Peter Neal. Thank you so much for joining me today for another episode of the podcast. This was probably one of my favorite interviews we have done so far. So I'm going to just preface this episode with that. I'm really excited to bring this interview to you today with an amazing guest. Before we get into it, though, I think this interview is, I think, going to be really great for our audience as accredited investors, as somebody who's achieved a certain amount of success in your life. And, you know, chances are you're constantly battling the balance between work and life and your responsibilities, your personal life, your family life, all that kind of stuff. And Jeff, our guest today, I think has done an absolutely amazing job at balancing his business and what he does in real estate and investing, along with a lot of different, amazing activities and charitable ventures and things like that in his personal life and his social life. So I think this is a really great episode that's going to resonate and help to kind of teach and provide a real life example of somebody who's figured it out and has figured out a way to really enjoy what they're doing and be passionate about what they're doing and find time to run an amazing business and do a lot on the investing side and in real estate. I love his strategy in medical office and that kind of thing that he's going to talk about, and then do some really amazing things in his social life with hanging out with friends and family and giving back and making an impact and somebody that really cares. I think passion for what you do in work and in your life is such an important part of things that's going to help in so many different ways. And it's one of the steps of living your accredited life. It's living your purpose. And I just think that's so important. When you're going through the different stages and you think about, living your accredited life. I always talk about accredited life. It's about a life that you're really passionate about, that you're really excited to get out of bed for in the morning. And it brings the vision that you've created, the foundation that you're working on, the kind of the goals and the metrics that you're working towards and that kind of thing, that all of that is serving your greater purpose. And because that's what's going to help to really bring passion and consistency, so that when you do run into challenges, the inevitable, bad day, bad attitude, bad feeling, whatever it is, things that come up that don't necessarily go your way, challenges in business and life, personally, socially, you name it, that coming back to this foundation, to this vision, and knowing that, you're doing something that's making an impact, that you love, that's important to you, that's important to others, all that kind of stuff. That's what gets you through. And that's what really helps to, I call it, live your accredited life. And I suggest you call it whatever you want to call it. I think it's really cool to have a kind of a brand name for the life that you want to live. It really makes it into something even greater than yourself. You hear a lot of people say living my best life, that kind of thing. I challenge you to try to find something, so some little nickname or some little thing to kind of brand that life and that vision and all that kind of stuff. So enough out of me. This is such a great interview. I hope you enjoy it. Jeff Meshel, he's an entrepreneur. He's a real estate investor. He's a master networker. I know a lot of us struggle in networking, and networking is so important for accredited investors and for everybody. Who is really going to get you far, and the people that who they know, all that kind of stuff is really going to get you far in life and with making investments and just doing anything, from jobs to helping your family and kids and spouse and that kind of thing. So Jeff is a master networker. He has a lot to offer when it comes to tips and tricks and things like that. And he's an author, and he's really somebody who cares and has found a way to do what he loves from an investing standpoint in his business, and also in his personal life and in his social life. So without further ado, let's get right into the interview with Jeff Meshel.
You're listening to the Accredited Investors Only Podcast, presented by Accredited Life.
All right, Jeff, how you feeling? Welcome to the show.
I'm feeling great, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So introduce yourself to the listener, Jeff. You got a lot of different things going on. I'd like to hear how you introduce yourself.
Well, it depends on what I'm introducing myself for. Well, my name is Jeff Meshel. I'm CEO of a company called Candor Capital Partners, which is real estate investment firm that buys properties, does bridge loans, and I'm on a series of boards of banks and companies, and written a whole bunch of books. And I'm out there every day. My passion is people. I collect people, and I love helping others, and without a quid pro quo. And literally every day, I pretty much meet somebody new. So I'm introduced to someone. I go listen, talk, and think about potentially being helpful, and that's a short version of who I am.
Well, and you've written a book on exactly that, right?
I've written 3 books. I'm on my 4th as we speak. 2 of them were regarding this passion, networking. First one's One Phone Call Away, Secrets of a Master Networker, and that kind of exploded. I was on the Today Show speaking all over the country and doing stuff that was really cool. Second book was called The Opportunity Magnet. And that book's about what do you need to do to make yourself stand out. And my 3rd book, which is unrelated to networking, is called Trust is a Double-Edged Sword. Trust me. And I wrote that because of a crooked partner and a horrible experience. And I really did a major amount of analytic work on that word, trust. And now I'm writing my newest book called, the title is Know Who You Know.
So would you say the books kind of correspond with your life at the time that you were writing them? It seems like they've evolved over time, from networking to trust, which, like you said, kind of plays off of what you experienced. And from what we've talked about with your new book, that is completely based off of your experiences at the end of the day, right? So you're writing what you know and what you've experienced.
It's what I've experienced and, what I see. I got a little gray hair here. So, as we go along, we learn. And, I have a statement, I don't know, I think I originated, which is good judgment comes from experience. Experience comes from bad judgment. And, and so you sit back and you look at the way the world is today and you say, it's a lot of really upsetting, challenging things that are occurring. And I get up every day and I say, you know what? I feel healthy, which, by the way, is the most important thing, health as well. And as I mentioned earlier, I did the gym 2 hours this morning, and I'm going. I have the pleasure of chatting with you and your listeners to hear what I have to say. So I consider myself to be a lucky person. I'm out there constantly trying to do stuff and keep going.
That's amazing. And like the community behind this podcast and not taking your wealth and the opportunities you have for granted is such an important thing. And it's a message that for me it's everything. And 10 years ago when I was introduced to this world, that was one of the things that stuck to me. So many people told me, you don't know how lucky you are. And I always wanted to make sure not to take that for granted. So there's so many things to unpack there. Was networking something that just kind of came natural to you, or is that something you had to work on? Was there somebody when you were growing up that, maybe that we used as an example that taught you the way or something like that? How did you become this master networker?
The answer is I actually don't know. It just happened. I many years ago, I was asked to join a networking group in New York. And, I didn't really know what I was joining. My banker asked me if I would consider joining. And I immediately got into it. And I got into it differently than everybody else. I started thinking about things at a different level than everybody else. And they immediately wanted me to come on the board, which I did. And I started seeing things and imparting things. And I started realizing, the importance of know who you know, build your teams. I collect people and I'm always putting people together. And I just think of things to do that other people don't do. I was on the phone last night with a dear friend of mine. He called me up. He was very upset. It was around 8:30. I was watching the ball game. And, I'm really not in good shape. So what's the matter, Jerry? He said, my really good friend, Howard, died today. Suddenly, he was sitting in a chair and he just died. And he said, do you remember him? He tells me his name. And I said, I vaguely, yeah, I remember him. It's been a long time. I don't remember him well. And he says, yeah, he was really close to me. So I look at my phone. I said, I met him September 10th, 2003. We were at this event. He was a really nice guy. And I have my notes here, like, you guys are really good friends. And he did all this. He says, I can't believe you have that information. The actual day you met him. Nobody does that. And I said, I guess not. And why do that? Well, what's the benefit of it? It actually is quite interesting that there is a very significant benefit. I've shocked people sometimes when I do that. It happens somewhat regularly. And the fact that I have their information and the fact that I could find them based upon their information becomes valuable, because you never know, things come across our plate every day. And to the title of my first book, One Phone Call Away, I've got 15,000 people in my personal database, and I can find them based upon not just their name, but their attributes. Chief financial officer for companies or real estate expert. I have the ability to search those characteristics, and all of a sudden a whole bunch of names pop up. I say, gee, I want to talk to that person. So there's a very distinct value. And I just do things people don't do.
That is absolutely amazing. What would you say for somebody that, it sounds like there's, in some ways it comes somewhat natural to you. For somebody that maybe it doesn't come natural, give us a glimpse into your life. You just said, that you'll write down what the person does, the day you met them, that kind of thing. Could you give us some actionable tips that we could do when we go to a networking event, when we meet somebody? What does Jeff do?
Well, literally what I do, as soon as I meet somebody, get their information, I literally put them in my database, their contact information, their email. And in the notes, I wrote the date that I met them, the context of how I met them, and any observations I might have. I then go to LinkedIn and I look a little bit more on the content of who they are and what they do. And then I look to see who our mutual friends are. And if we have, significant mutual friends, I may send an email to that person. By the way, you're friendly with this person. And it creates engagement and conversation. Simultaneously, if it's somebody that I'm interested in pursuing more of a relationship, I might reach out to a couple of people that we both know to get some feedback on that person. And I do that all the time.
Yeah. And it sounds simple, but there's, at the end of the day, when you come home from a networking event, or, maybe you wake up the next day, so many people just don't do that. Right. You know what I mean? So you've made a habit out of doing that.
Nobody does it. So that's nobody does it.
Exactly.
It's a discipline. We're not taught, it's interesting. We go to universities, we go to school, we learn marketing, we learn finance, accounting. They have these classes. But there's no class on networking. There's no science, no methodology, nothing that we're taught at an early age to think this way. I mean, how remiss is the educational system that there isn't something like that? In fact, my organization, the Strategic Forum that I created, which is a very high-level group of 30 CEOs here in Florida, and same in New York, we have 2 chapters. In Florida, we had our meetings at FIU University, and we have students that sit around the periphery of the meetings learning about business networking as a curriculum add-on. No university's ever done that. How valuable is that? And then I would tell you that hugely, because these young people benefit from us in terms of guiding them, creating job opportunities for them, building relationships. It's so incredibly important. If you can impart that in people at a very young age, it makes a difference. The other day, before I got on the phone with you here today, a good friend of mine just called me, and I volunteered. He has a son that's 18, just graduating high school, and he's had some issues, got divorced, And I said to him, Evan, he didn't ask me to do this. I would love to speak to your son. I'd like to sit down and meet him and see that, his dad has a good friend, and talk to him a little bit. And I did that last week, and I went and met him at a coffee shop and sat with him for an hour. And for that hour, he was very young from an experiential perspective. He's going to college now. And I started planting the seeds of things that he should think about doing. I shared the idea, know who you know. your friends, create a database. What are their interests? Put it in the notes section. When you meet someone new, start building your connections now. You're 18. By the time you're 25, that becomes really valuable to them. And then we talked about a bunch of different things. I just got off the phone with my friend. He said he really enjoyed talking to you. And he said, Dad, he had some really good ideas. He made me smile.
That's amazing. Could you give us an example of a time where you were doing something, something maybe in real estate or and we're going to get into all the other stuff you do too, with just making a difference and the projects you invest your time into. But was there ever a time where you needed something, and you went to the database and it worked? Is there an example you can think of that?
How about this morning?
Mm-hmm.
I own several medical facilities here in Miami, a company called Clinical Care, if you go in the news. And I knew that they had financial issue, but I bought the facilities. The company has filed bankruptcy. Now, that being said, Humana came in and bought the company, which I view as a probable real positive thing. That said, I'm not totally sure because, they had a huge amount of debt. The company was acquired in 2020. And I knew going in that I had a credit risk. So I immediately after one of my guys called me and I got the email about it, I literally 5 minutes after sent the chairman of the board of the investment company that bought the company for $500 million in 2020. And I sent him an email, said, Mark, hope you're well, had a great summer. I know him, obviously. I'd love to chat with you about something. Within 10 minutes, he responded to me. He says, what do we need? And said, great hearing from you. Hope everything's great with you. And it's just like specific, we need to talk about it. And right before I got on the call with you, I said, I'd like to chat with you about the company, your views. And I'm sure later on today, he's the guy that I want to talk to because I want to get insight from his perspective. They bought the company for $500 million. They now lost it, but he's my friend. I know him. He's not my friend that I hang out with him, but I know him. I know him a long time. One phone call away.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's got to provide a certain level of comfort in just in going about your daily life and going about your business, that when you have this database that you can go to and when things come up, you could think to yourself, you could search, and think, okay, here's what I need, here's who I should be talking to, all that kind of stuff. Because it's like you always, like you said, you're one phone call away from talking to somebody who, if they can't help you, I'm sure they can get you to somebody who can, right?
Well, something that really stands out to me is I just got remarried 2 years ago. Best wife ever. I love her to death. We get along great. But my first wife, that was a disaster. I'm being, you're making that sound as bad as it really was. Sure, to the extent of it being bad, I'm not exaggerating sharing that she went through 20 different attorneys in our divorce. I only had one. She went through 20 different ones. You can't even make up the stories of the severity of what I experienced. My children were very young at the time. I would describe divorce as, in the hierarchy of horrible things that happened to us in our lives, the first terrible thing, number one, is death, obviously. The second thing is divorce. I mean, some aren't so bad. Mine was horrific. And it's a horrible, horrible experience. We don't know anything about it. We don't realize the ramifications of it. We don't understand the process. And all of a sudden, you're in it. And I describe that like being in a giant vat of quicksand. You're standing there, you keep sinking, and all of a sudden there's two talking heads, her lawyer, my lawyer, and the dollar signs are flying all over the place. You have no control, and it's aside from being very expensive, it's emotionally can be devastating. It can really mess people up. So when I was going through it, and mine was so extreme, and what I just described is how I felt. I all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, what do I do? I know a lot of people. So I started calling friends, and I'd say, do you have any buddies that are, guys, that they have friends that are in their mid 40s that have two young kids, have kids that are going through, do you know anybody? And call Steve, call Bob, call Tom. I started getting all these referrals from people that I knew to meet guys like me relative to what I was going through as they were going through it as well. I make calls, I go sit with them. And it was an incredible experience because aside from we're both experiencing this terrible thing, it was like instant best friend. It was like instant camaraderie. And I learned things that were so meaningful. One thing that was so incredibly significant as to the outcome of my divorce, and it came from one of these fellows similar to me, and not from my attorney. And it was a business thing because attorneys, candidly, particularly matrimonial, are not necessarily business people; they're more process oriented. And it was like oh my God moment. And after 3-4 of these meetings with new people, light bulb goes off in my head. Now at the time, I had about 8,500 people in my database, people that I had been collecting over the years. And I sent out the following email to my database: divorced or divorcing dads with young children luncheon. That was the topic. If you're going through what I'm going through, where you're being abused by the system, have no idea what's going to happen next, feel like you're living in fog, being financially extorted, and are gravely concerned about the potential emotional scars inflicted upon our children, I'm putting together similarly situated dads to vent, strategize, and for each of us to help each other. If I'm describing you and you'd like to participate, you have an interest, please let me know. I'd love to chat with you. If I'm describing a friend, I would really appreciate if you could forward my email to that person. Thank you very much. I put send. 8,500 people, no exaggeration. I had over 2,000 responses. People were forwarding to people they knew. I had a tsunami come at me, and I responded to every one of the calls. I responded, and not only did I respond to everyone, I put together 50 guys that had commonality from a demographic perspective. I got a very large conference room in New York City. I brought my lawyer, my matrimonial attorney, and I got up and I had these 50 guys like me that are going through this, and no game plan, no script, no bullet points. I just got up and spoke from my heart. I shared the horrible things I was going through, and it was like deer in headlights. And when I speak, I do it very much like I'm doing with you today on an impromptu basis. I don't plan it. I just do it. And all of a sudden, I started calling on people, and all of a sudden the room erupted. It went on for 3 hours. Nobody wanted to leave. Guys are coming up to me afterwards. Jeff, you got to keep this going. Jeff, this is the most meaningful. Jeff, this is incredible. Jeff, let's come up with it. So I created something called the Divorcing Dad Council. I started monthly doing events, sending out an email to my database. And now I'd bring speakers, experts, and have a panel. And then I send out the email who the panel was. And and then that turned into a company called Divorce Force. I created the first online web community to empower and help people affected by divorce. Had a CEO running it, and it was the first one out there. And it all came about by me pushing a button on my computer called send to my database. Know who you know.
Wow. That is unbelievable. What a powerful story of just where you just don't know where connections and relationships like that are going to lead you, and you had the courage to ask the question. I think that's such an important part too. That's something we've talked about in the past, is just asking really good questions. Let's talk about that, Jeff, because I think it's so much of the importance when you're meeting new people and how you can stand out and how you can really get to know somebody is by asking good questions. And you've talked about this. So tell me about your thoughts on this stuff.
Well, it's funny because I think we discussed a little last time we spoke, but it actually came to another level most recently. And I have a chapter in my new book, Know Who You Know. That chapter's title is Always Ask the First Question.
Yeah.
What you do, though, make sure it's a good question, but always ask the first question. And what I'm referring to is when you go to an event and there's speakers and you're sitting there listening for an extended period of time, an hour and change, whenever it ends, always raise your hand and ask the first question. Make sure it's a good first question, by the way. I've had a lot of interesting stories associated with this way of thinking. And the reason why you do it is because if you're focused in one place for a very long period of time, no matter what's being presented, you start to get tired. Your attention starts to wane. You start to fade. The first change of direction, the first change of focus is like an alert. It's like, you wake up. And so the opportunity that exists by doing what I just suggested is that you become the focal point in a change of direction. Mental stimuli. You stimulate people to be focused. So always ask the first question. So during the summer, I was asked to attend an event in Manhattan at a law firm, and it was a networking event. A friend of mine runs this group. I had no clue really, other than what it was. I never had gone to one of his things, and I heard that ex-Governor Patterson from New York, was going to be the speaker at the breakout lunch breakfast thing that they had. Okay, great, whatever. I go, bouncing around, talking to people. We sit down in this big room. I had 30 people or so. Panel consisted of Governor Patterson and the head real estate partner for this firm. Now, this is a large real estate firm in the city. I think they have 6 floors in this office building to give you a sense how big they are. And there were 3 people on the panel, and the real estate partner turns to Governor Patterson, and he brought up several things. But the first thing he brought up was, we have a real problem. We can't get people to come to work. If we get people to come to work 3 days, tops, some people don't want to come in at all. It's a humongous problem for the firm. We have no idea what we're going to do. Governor Patterson, what are your thoughts? Is this going to change? And, very nice gentleman basically kicked the can, things will get better where, the conditions are what they are. And, things in the city will get, change. But it, didn't answer the question, politician. So all the questions he was asked were very similar to that. At the very end, the moderator gets up. Are there any questions? And I fly out of my chair and I flail my arm. Now, I happen to know the gentleman. I didn't realize it was him because I hadn't seen this guy in 15 years. But it's Jeff Meshel. Jeff Meshel is the master network. And that's how he introduced me. And I look at, thank you so much. I didn't really, I appreciate the very kind introduction. And I look at everybody and I said, well, I actually don't have a question. I have an observation and a thought relative to what you were asked, Governor Patterson. Steve, I think that's the law partner's name. You mentioned you have a big issue with people coming to work, and one is coming to work, and they're 3 days a week's the max, and it's a huge problem for the firm. We understand when COVID came out, changed everything, and people didn't come into work. That it stayed partially because, or maybe significantly because of technology, Zoom calls, and some people realize, I don't want to come back to the office. That's changed a lot now. People are coming back, and they're focusing more, but it's still a very big problem, not because of COVID, because of other reasons. I would argue that I walk down the streets in New York City. What do I see? I see homeless all over the place. I see drug addicts all over the place. There are migrants flying up and down the streets. I can go into a store, any store, and steal up to $1,000 of merchandise. They can't do anything. No one gets arrested. How many stores on our streets are dark because they've lost so much money they can't sustain being in business? We hear about shootings. We hear about robberies. We hear about murders. It's nonstop, protests all over. It's a high degree of not being safety. I shared that I was on the board of the CPR Foundation, Community Police Relations. I said, I'm on the streets. I actually have a police badge. I'm helping law enforcement repair the apathy of the community. I said, look at my arm. I said, I have nice watches. I do not wear a watch walking the streets of New York City anymore. I hear terrible stories. A friend of mine got knocked down and his watch stolen. I hear it all the time. People are afraid to come to the city. They don't want to be here. They're afraid. They're not going to come to work unless they feel safe. Governor Patterson, you could say things are going to get better. You could say, over time will change. You know what needs to change? The policies of the administration running the city. This far left wokeism, let them go, let them free. I said a police officer got killed in Queens 3-4 months ago. Police officer goes up to a car parked in a bus stop to tell him to move. The passenger takes a gun and shoots the guy, the police officer. The bullet went under his vest, dead on the spot. 31-year-old police officer with a 1-year-old son. The guy that shot him, he had been arrested 23 times for criminal activities with guns, all sorts of bad things, and he's still on the street. Until we have law enforcement, until people feel safe in the city, no one's going to want to come to work. That's what needs to change. I'm not too exaggerating to tell you that what occurred afterwards is the entire room got up and gave me a standing ovation.
Sure.
I've literally had 40 or 50 meetings for people. 25 of the 30 people came up to me, want to meet me, talk to me. One woman was running for a council seat in Queens. She says to me, have you considered running for municipal office?
I was going to say, they want you to run probably.
So that's what she said to me. So much stuff came out of that, some cool stuff. Now, the irony of it all, if we've been watching the news and seen what's gone on, Governor Patterson and his son were just attacked in New York by, I think they were gang people for, that came, and it was all over the news. The irony of it all, after what I said, he just got attacked and beaten by bad people in Manhattan. How ironic is that? But the point of the story is, I've had 40 or 50 meetings from me getting up and doing what I did and saying what I said.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Always. Oh, full story.
Yeah, unbelievable. Yeah, always ask the first question. Yeah, I feel like you have a natural curiosity that maybe not everybody has. You know what I mean? And that's what leads to you wanting to talk to people, collecting people, all that kind of stuff, and just asking questions. Is there any kind of formula for asking a good question? Because I like how you prefaced, ask the first question, but it has to be a good question. I think maybe that's where sometimes, and my mom would always joke. My mom was a school teacher for 35 years, and she would always joke. People like to say there's no stupid questions, and she would say, "Teaching for 35 years, there's stupid questions, without a doubt." So, how do you ask a good question?
Well, look, it's a context of whatever environment you're in. It's hard to give a generic answer to that.
That is right.
Some modicum of common sense. But I think when you ask the question, you ask a question where the people in the room are impacted
Mm.
by the question in their lives, or they see something, or they see the effects of the answer to what the question might be. That creates a higher degree of regard or interest. So that might be a suggestion of what to think of.
Mhm.
There's no 100% answer. And again, it obviously depends on context.
Sure. It's a tough question, but I thought it worth asking with somebody who I like, and I like what you're saying there too, with just an impactful question. Because I think sometimes that could be the challenge, especially after you listen to something for half an hour or 20 minutes, an hour, or something like that, and you start to doze off yourself or whatever. Coming up with what's that great question going to be, and what you said there kind of gives some framework, some mindset around what to have in mind and then maybe just let the question come out. But that's amazing.
Another trick, or actually the way I think, which the statement I'm about to make is actually a pervasive statement to everything else. You asked a question in the beginning about which the answer is, and I forgot the question that you asked, but it's not about me. One of the issues that there are some people that are me people. They're givers, takers, they're matchers. I'm an over the top giver. And for me, I love, like, I went and met my friend's son. I asked him if I could do it. He didn't like say, "Could you go me?" Because I thought I could be helpful.
Yeah.
The point is that if I brought up the question to Patterson because it was obvious the severity of what's happening in New York City and how bad it is. And because of my experience being on the board of the CPR Foundation, I brought it up to say, what are we going to do about changing this? Because everybody here is impacted by it. So, but it's not about me. It's about you. And if we start thinking about others and we start thinking about how do I make a difference, aside from actually making a difference, it's extremely rewarding in terms of the appreciation and the things that come from it. And that's how I live my life. I step back now and say, look, I could retire if I wanted to. I could never retire. I love being busy. I love doing my deals. I love being out there. I have to be today, even more than ever. It's about making a difference. And it's about going out there and trying to help things and there's no shortage of things that need this type of address, that we could all make a difference. And I would tell your listeners that everyone has interests, everyone has care things. Something have, family that have some disease or affliction and get involved in foundations and charities. Everybody should not just ask what's in it for me. Everybody should say, how could I help you? And get involved in something where you make a difference. Imagine if the entire population thought that way.
It would be a different world.
It'd be a different world. It would be a different world.
And what an opportunity too, because so many people don't think that way. It's an opportunity to really stand out and to be different from the crowd in a lot of ways. I love what you're saying there. There's so much to unpack just in those few statements. Talk to me about what you're doing in business, because I want to get back to everything you're doing with making a difference. I think you've been able to balance, like you said, doing deals and your business and real estate with making an impact so well that you live this great life where you're constantly dancing between the two worlds. But you seem to have such a passion for still doing deals and things like that. And sometimes I talk to people, who've been doing it for as long as you have, and I feel like maybe the passion's dwindled a little bit. And you've told me too, like how your career has progressed over time, and kind of the experience you had during COVID that led you into medical office space and things like that. So talk to me about what it is that you're doing in business, and then we'll circle back around to making a difference in some of the projects you're in and things like that.
Well, it's a moving thing. My primary focus is currently acquiring real estate that's compelling to me. I mentioned that I've had a strong interest in medical tenanted properties, trying to be conservative in a world where there's a lot of change because medical is not going anywhere. So I've acquired a bunch of medical properties. I've done some industrial, a couple other different properties that fall outside the box. I'm also a short-term lender. I do what's known as bridge loans on situations that need immediate financing. It's higher rate financing. And so on the day-to-day, I focus a lot on that. I'm on the board of a new bank that's emerging in New York. I was on the board of Signature Bank for 15 years. That went down in 2023. And that was a terrible, horrible thing. That bank was not insolvent. It was actually political that took it down, but that's a whole long story. So I'm going to the board of this new bank. So I'm helping them, get it off the ground and involved with that. I get involved in some venture capital stuff. I started on Wall Street way back when, so I'm still in the investment game and, other buckets of interest. So I'm constantly listening to opportunities that I may get involved in. I've gotten involved in some companies, helping them. Again, sometimes getting involved in these companies because of who I know, aside from, writing a check and getting people money in, I can help them advance their business because I can make an introduction that brings business to them. So I'm all over the place when it comes to all these different, I'm an investment guy in the investment world out there looking all the time for things that I find compelling and make sense. I spend a lot of time on charity. I literally every day I'm involved in 2 foundations that I'm more than passionate about and really want to help and make a difference. So I literally, today I have to go show up for something for one of those foundations. And that let's consume my day. And then, in between which I'll take my wife shopping for a couple of things.
That's amazing. Yeah. You have such a great balance between, making a difference and charity and with your business and all. What is it? What does your day look like on the business side of things? Are you dealing with brokers? Are you raising capital? Are you wearing different hats? Are you doing property management? Give me an idea there of what it is that you like to do at this stage of your career and all. And, just give me some ideas there.
So, there's no better example than what I'm doing today. I had the pleasure of sitting here today with you, having this interview, which I'm enjoying very much. And after I'm finished with you and jump in the shower, get ready, I have lunch with one of my investors who participates in my transactions. Just to catch up, talk about what's going on. There's a money guy, what he's seeing, that may turn into other opportunities because he'll see things, make an introduction. Then I have a meeting after with him with a guy that I did a speaking thing last week in Miami, 30 people in the room. And, everyone came at me. This guy reached out. He's a real estate guy. He's very involved in different aspects of real estate. I have no idea what's going to come from, but he reached out. So I'm going to go meet him for a coffee after, learn who he is, what he does, to share with him what I do. And later on, I've got 3 friends, a couple of them are investors of mine. We're getting together just to have some wine at the end of the day and chat. And in between, I'll be on my phone, calls, emails, getting information, sending things to my guys to evaluate. And that's today.
That's a full day right there. That's amazing. And talk to me. You mentioned one of your books is about a partnership that you had that went south, and I think there's information there. Like you said, you did a ton of research on that book. There's information there I think that could really help the audience. Give us some context to that book and how it shaped your business today and everything that you do.
That's the last book I wrote. Title is Trust is a Double-Edged Sword. Trust me. And I had to use a pen name. Waywill is the author because the publisher wouldn't let me use my name because I go into detail about my crooked ex-partner who was a very bad guy. Aside from being a thief, forger, fake names, fake email addresses, his wife went off a terrace in Boca 2 years ago. Mother of 3 usually don't jump off terraces. Her mother said he killed her. Her friend said he killed her. And he's still out there. A guy named David Kushner. I have no hesitation to say his name. Really, really bad guy. The unfortunate revelation was I knew him for 20 years. He was my partner. My company was called Paradigm, and he ran day-to-day operations. I was rainmaker, and it is a long history of stuff. I had another partner that left the company. He helped me take control of it, and I trusted him implicitly. He was with me through the horrible divorce, very caring and watching my back, and he did all sorts of things that built this trust in him. That being said, there were all sorts of weird stuff that was happening over time. Not so much in the company, but it turned out to be a lot in the company. But on it personally, the guy got arrested. He lived in Cresskill, New Jersey, and he got arrested because his kid wasn't getting enough playing time basketball in high school. So Kushner created a fake email, fake name, and sent threatening emails to the coach, the coach's wife, and emails to the school to get him fired. I don't know what the emails said, but they were bad enough. The coach went to the local police in Cresskill, New Jersey. It's all over the news.
Okay.
And they traced the email to Kushner's house. He and his wife got arrested. He denied that he did it. But there were all sorts of bizarre stories. At the end, there were so many things going weird and stuff. And I had a junior partner. And when I discovered the severity of what he was doing, I had to shut the company down. Cost me a huge amount of money. Fortunately, because I was on the board of Signature Bank, all our banking was Signature, I got him off all the accounts. He couldn't touch any of the money anymore. But I was discovering landmines all over. And if you saw me in 2019, my hands were going like this. My blood pressure was way up. And I had an assistant help me. And I got so mad at myself. I was in Manhattan looking out my window. It's, the world's coming up. Our COVID started. There's riots on the street. The BLM setting garbage pails on fire. I mean, and I'm like sitting there like, oh my God, what am I going to do with my life? It's coming apart. And I'm thinking about how I trusted this guy. And I said, I was remiss. I was really, and I started thinking about it, and all the things I started to discover, I started writing down, because people that know me and know him who read the book say this should be like the next Netflix series. That's how extreme.
It sounds like it, yeah.
It was real. But then I really started thinking about the word, and I started thinking, wow, you know what? Trust, it's the core to everything in our lives.
Sure.
Everything we do, the foundation is trust, and we just don't think about it enough. And that was the catalyst for me to start doing a tremendous amount of research. So by example, aside from the story and sharing all the insanity of this sick, bad person, second chapter of the book is, should I buy what I'm sold? And it talks about all these products out there that are marketed to us with fallacious representations. Some of it's funny, but some is really far from funny. You go into any drugstore, and all those suntan lotions we see in the front, all those copper tone and Sunbum, or there's an app called Yuka. If you scan the barcode, it tells you from 1 to 100, good product and bad. Not one of those suntan lotions is above a 1. They're all bad because they have cancerous ingredients in them, and because there's no regulatory body, we don't know about it. By the way, Yuka is a great app to get for your listeners. YUKA, get the app. When I told my wife about it, the app that was, she ran to the supermarket. I said, what are we doing? She was in there for 45 minutes. All she was doing is walking up and down the aisles, scanning barcodes after paying for, about products. But the point of the story is, we're sold a lot of bad stuff. There's a lot of really crazy stories in that chapter. And I go to so many different components of trust that are relevant to our lives. One other quick story about that. I played tennis with this young fellow who's 23 years old. He's a tennis pro. And after the third time I played with him, I said, you know what, Julian, next time I come, I'm going to bring you a copy of my most recent book, which I did. He got the book. 6 days go by, roughly, and he sends me a text. You changed my life. I go, whoa, it's pretty strong, saying this. I didn't respond because I was playing with him the next day. I get on the court. I walk over to him. I say, Julian, I saw your text. What do you mean? So I want to show you something. He takes out his phone and he shows me this picture of this incredibly beautiful girl that is his girlfriend. They've been together for a year and change, pressuring him to get married. And he tells me she's Russian. Now, down here in South Miami, Russian girls, kind of flare over the bow. You got to be very careful. Mm-hmm. That being said, he's going on, and he's telling me, and he just can't make the decision. Mm-hmm. One day he's going to do it. One day he's vacillating. Her mother's pressuring him. And he's really under major pressure. And he's been thinking about it and not doing it, going to do it, not doing it, going to do it. He read the book and he broke up with her. Yeah. And he looks at me and he says to me, you made me realize. You made me realize I wasn't thinking about things. I realized I didn't like her. I didn't like her person, who she was, the way she was about things and, people. And I just didn't realize it. And you went into a whole thing about knowing your friends and things of that nature. And it just was like the lights went on and he looks at me. I want to thank you so much. And that was huge compensation for me.
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. Yeah. How are you able to trust again after something like that? I mean, I have investors who they've gotten burned on deals and things like that, and you can just tell, the way that they act or whatever, they're different than somebody that maybe hasn't had that experience. And then I have other investors who have had those experiences and they move on, and they're able to continue to trust, that kind of thing. For somebody with such an extreme example of you put your trust in somebody, it ended up, not going the way you thought it was going to, right? How are you able to trust again?
I'm not going to change as a person. I am a very trusting person. I don't want to change. I think it's a very powerful attribute to trust, to want to embrace and believe in people and feel things are good. The difference now is I'm smarter about it. I'm more knowledgeable. I think more. I'm more reactive. At the end of the book, I have the 10 commandments of trust. The first commandment is don't go against your gut feeling. 98% of the time, your gut feeling is spot on. And I would tell you from experience, I have in the past kicked the can on my gut feeling. And I think that every time I did, everybody has. That's the point. And every time I have, it was the wrong decision. So the reality is that's something that you got to be very, very respectful to your gut feeling, and don't forsake it. But I'm not stopping being trusting. I want to be trusting. I'm just more careful about it. I think a little bit more about it. And the degree of being trusting is more refined. And I must tell you that when I was doing the research on all these different topics that are in the book, aside from imparting what I was discovering for everybody to read, I was learning because I was just, and I was thinking about things I just didn't think about before. And that's the point. We don't think about this enough. We have to be much more aware about it because there's not, the funny part, when I was writing the book, I would send chapters to friends to get their thoughts and opinions. And the first 2 chapters and everyone loved it. It was like, this is unbelievable. Let me tell you my story. Let me tell you there's not one person, not one, no exceptions, that has not been violated in trust, either on a personal or business level or both. There's no exceptions. We unfortunately all have experienced this. We just got to be smart about it to mitigate it from happening again.
Yeah, that's amazing. Great advice. Because like you said, it's something that affects every single person in their lifetime in different ways. It could be in business, it could be in their personal life. It could be both, but really great advice. And it kind of gives a window into your soul, and into what's important to you and what you value, which leads to my next line of questioning is talk to you. You mentioned the charities that you're in. You're doing some amazing stuff with the Clarion Project and some other projects and things like that. Talk to us about that and just how you enjoy that, what you get out of that, all that kind of stuff. Talk to us about that.
Well, the 2 foundations that I work on every day, the first one's called CPR, Community Police Relations. I've been on the board for 5-6 years. I really helped it grow significantly. The essence of that foundation, its genesis was to repair the antipathy between law enforcement and community caused very much by extreme movements like BLM or certain politicians, defund the police, all this insanity to turn the community against law enforcement. We do everything to enhance the community with law enforcement. And simple things like 2 days before Thanksgiving, my wife and I were with police here in Miami, and our founder, the foundation gave away 3,000 turkeys for Thanksgiving, but we didn't give them away. We give them to the police to go to people's homes. So literally with ABC News, we were running around to the toughest neighborhoods, and the sirens are going, people coming out, their place, and police officers walk up and hand a turkey to the person. I want to wish you a happy Thanksgiving. You had to see their faces. And that's just a mild example. We're very involved with them in human trafficking. This is something that's being politically quelled in terms of severity. The number one crime issue in our country that is much bigger than drugs is human trafficking. It's all over our country. Here in the state of Florida, Florida's the third worst state, and it's a huge multi-billion dollar business. And it's beyond that movie Taken. The movie Taken is one aspect of it. Taking people off the state. They have these facilities of harvesting organs. I mean, the stories are over the top, and we're very actively involved with law enforcement from the perspective of developing technologies where we're funding or helping them catch these sinister people. I mean, there's so many elements of that foundation. I actually have a police badge. I'm known if I talk, they know who I am, and I show up to so many things. We do things with children, schools. There's a team or a school here in Miami. They had a football team, and we found out through the local police that this football team, they're wearing uniforms that are 40 years old, 35 years old, and every season, as the kids graduate, they inherit their uniforms. They're disgusting. They're broken helmets, and they were disgusting. We went out and got all new uniforms for the football team. Our logo's on their sleeve, all brand new equipment, and the police are the ones that gave it to them. The police, we didn't do it. The police brought it to them. So we're doing all these things to restore, the community law enforcement. During the BLM insanity, we've done so much here in the Florida area that in one area, people, which is a minority area, people were coming out of their homes because they were the BLM, radicals going and attacking everything. And they went arm to arm in front of the police station, not letting them go attack the police station. Literally a true story. So we've accomplished, and it's an amazing, amazing thing. I work on this. I bet give you the short thing. There's so many things we focus on with that. That's the CPR Foundation. The Clarion Project.
Well, before you go on to Clarion, I just what came to mind there was trust. I mean, isn't that such a big part of everything you're saying there is people's trusting in the police and things like that?
It's hard to, I mean, I could talk the words, you and your listeners can listen to me. I'll share one more story, which really hits the nail on the head. The founder, I was in New York City because I live in both places. And there was a day we were giving away $50 food cards in a project. It was called the Wagner Project, like 125th and 2nd Avenue. And I was there. So, the founder asked if I would go to show on behalf of the foundation. Now, again, we weren't giving away. The police were. It was a horrible day in November, pouring rain, cold. I drive up, I pull my car into the playground. I walk over, there's a big blue tent, and the police are underneath, and there's hundreds and hundreds of people standing in line in the pouring rain, cold as freezing out, to get a $50 food card. Hundreds. I was like, whoa. I get out of my car, I walk over to the tent. There was a police lieutenant and a sergeant standing there. I knew the lieutenant, I didn't know the sergeant. As I walk up, an elderly woman walks up, and the police sergeant hands her a $50 food card and a water bottle. And the woman looks at me and she says, "I want to thank you so much. You have no idea how much this changes my life. This is such a big thing for me. This really makes it such a big difference. I can't thank you enough." And I'm standing there listening to her saying this to me. And I'm saying, oh my God, it's a $50 food card. It's not like $1,000 or $5. It's a 50. Sure. She's going on and on. And I look at her and I said, "Ma'am, please don't thank me. That food card has nothing to do with me. You thank the police sergeant who gave it to you. He's the one that's giving it to you. He's the one that cares. He's here all the time protecting you from the crime in the neighborhood. He's the one that gave you a card. Please don't thank me." She pauses, stops, repeats what she said to me, says it to him, and then says, "And I want to thank you. I know it's bad here at crime, but I promise you it'll get better. And thank you. Thank you for taking care of me." I'm sharing this story with you. I'm getting chills sharing the story with you because when I was standing there, I was so taken by the sincerity, how much she appreciated the police. That is the crux of what we're looking to do in bringing the community and law enforcement together. And it's very meaningful.
Wow, that's powerful. The Clarion Project. Talk to me about that, because that's also a very powerful organization.
I would recommend everybody to go Google it. Clarion, the Clarion Project. Gentleman who runs it, very interesting guy. He has a team of 21 people, the majority of which came out of something called the NSA. The head person from the NSA that left this government body, he was responsible for finding Osama bin Laden for our country. The way they found Osama bin Laden is they were tracking Osama bin Laden's bodyguards on their phones, and they were able to discover their location of where they were on their phones. Hence, if they knew where the bodyguards were, Osama bin Laden had to be close by. And that's how we took out Osama bin Laden, this gentleman from the NSA. That team, the NSA, they left the NSA and joined the Clarion Project. The Clarion Project is a not-for-profit charity. I suggest everyone, if they donate 25, 50, 100, whatever that felt comfortable or more, is a foundation that scours social media for threats. Period. End of story. This team, that's all they do. In the last 2 years, we unveiled almost 200 threats for school shootings in our country. We stopped one in Austin, Texas 3 months ago. A 13-year-old kid hated his school, was on TikTok procuring a gun. TikTok is very dangerous. It matches you to people for things you're looking for. Finds another kid older than he, gets a gun in Texas, and is planning to go shoot up his school. Unfortunately, because again of the policies that exist today, law enforcement are not allowed to follow people on social media because they call it profiling. So I'm, and I'll share another story, a Hamas cell leader, and I'm on social media. They can't follow him because that's profiling. Insane, makes no sense. We, on the other hand, are not subject to any of these rules. We put together a dossier, and then we go to the FBI, and then they can do something. The FBI called Austin police, and they got the kid the day he was walking to the school. We've had close to 200 of these type of things. We just stopped another potential school shooting in Boca Raton 3 weeks ago. That's one side of it. Anti-Semitic activity in this country is up 20 times since a year ago. The stories we stopped the shootings of synagogues in Ohio. I have a picture of a terrorist in New York City as a Hamas cell leader in the subway system wearing a black mask, trying to get people to come together to plant bombs in the subway. You can't imagine the severity of what is going on. In my book on trust, I have a chapter about, technology. It's called What Happened to the Humans, how all these great things have happened. But what are the things we can't trust? And I go about our cell phone, social media. How dangerous is social media? It's so over the top dangerous in so many ways. It's especially for our children. It's very, very scary. In this case, it's a tool for a lot of very dangerous people out there to do something. And what this foundation is, their whole purpose is to stop terrorism, to stop disaster, to stop really horrible things before they happen. And we've accomplished a lot. It's really been an incredible thing. The Clarion Project. So I work on that every day.
Wow. That's amazing. I strongly suggest everybody Google that, look it up, and find ways that they can support. Jeff, what an amazing conversation, very inspiring. I love how you've been able to balance and you still find excitement in what you do in real estate and in business and investing, along with these powerful projects that are really making a difference in the world. I think the listeners can take so much from that and find ways to, your wealth is only as good as the relationships, your health, all that kind of the difference you're making in the world, all that kind of stuff. That's what really matters at the end of the day, right?
Well, that's a on point, totally correct. I would tell every one of your listeners to Google Steve Jobs' last written statement prior to his demise. He was worth at that time $6 billion or whatever the amount was. Read what he said that he made public before he died. And to your point, exactly the point you made, my new book, I have a chapter about self-introspection. Being the wealthiest guy in the graveyard is not much of a testimony.
Yeah. That's a powerful statement. Jeff, how can the listeners find out more about you? How can they buy your books? How can they get into closer to you in your world?
Well, I'm to the title of my first. I'm one phone call away. You could Google me if you want to reach out to me. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm out there. I'm on my emails. My company's Candor Capital Partners. I have it. Jeff@CandorCapitalPartners.com is my email address. Or my personal one, Meshel, J1@gmail.com. Anyone has a question or if I can be helpful, don't hesitate to reach out. I'd be glad to talk, if I can make an introduction that could be helpful or you just want a soundboard. This is very important to me. the fact that I can make a difference, and it's an honor. If you want to read the books, they're on, Amazon under my name, except the trust book. The author's name is Waywill, because they wouldn't let me use my name because I share so much detail about this very bad guy, David Kushner. They're worth reading. I think you'd get a lot out of them. If I could be helpful, I'm one phone call away.
That's awesome. Jeff, thank you so much for coming today and talking to me. I really enjoyed the conversation. It's jam-packed with just so much information. I know the listeners will get a lot out of it. So I appreciate you taking the time. Thanks so much, Jeff.
It was truly my pleasure. Thank you for having me.